They told me it was a celebration. A night to toast victories that weren't mine. Drink to futures I wasn't invited into. I came because I was supposed to. That's all I ever was to her in the last year. Supposed to. Smile, nod, wear the navy suit because it photographs well. Show up, but stay quiet. That's how I ended up standing beside her in the ballroom of the Belhist estate. A place soaked in gold light and old money, while she sparkled in a way that had nothing to do with the diamond on her finger. I hadn't noticed it at first, the way her smile curved just a bit too sharply when she spotted him across the room. I thought maybe she was just working, schmoozing like she always did, the kind of talking where every compliment has an expiration date and every touch has a purpose. But then he looked back at her, and I saw something I wasn't meant to see, something too familiar. Not the flirtation. No, the ownership. He didn't look at her like she was a mystery. He looked at her like he had already solved her, like he had her folded in his back pocket, like he could reach for her any time he wanted and she'd still be warm. It wasn't suspicion that hit me. It was recognition. You don't mistake that kind of intimacy. You just don't. I didn't make a scene. I didn't storm. I walked away, not out of weakness, but because I knew whatever was happening wasn't born that night. It had grown somewhere else, somewhere quiet. And if it had roots, I needed to find them. I left her in that room full of crystal and whispers, and I disappeared without anyone noticing. Not even her. That same night, I went home alone and opened her laptop. I knew her password. I shouldn't have. She made a habit of changing it every few weeks, always pretending it was for security. But she never guessed that I knew about the old photo she once posted, the name of the dog she lied about not loving. That was the key. What I found didn't start with the congressman. It started months ago, maybe longer. A hidden email account, calendar invites that didn't match what she told me, bank charges at hotels we never stayed in, transfers, a name that appeared again and again. Not his, someone else. First, I thought maybe it was just him, just one. Then I realized, no, that would have been too clean. This was layered, intentional, rotting from the inside out, and she wore it like perfume. I didn't sleep. I didn't even move from that chair. I sat there reading lie after lie until the sun came up and the birds outside sang like nothing had happened. Her life was a lattice of affairs, strategic and stupid. It wasn't about love or even lust. It was about power. She was trading pieces of herself for influence, for status. She wasn't a victim. She was a player. And worse, she thought I'd never notice. Or maybe she didn't care if I did. She came home late the next morning, heels in her hand, makeup smudged just slightly, like she tried to fix it in the car. She didn't expect me to be awake. Didn't expect me to be sitting in the kitchen with her laptop still open, her world exposed between us. Where were you? I asked her, calm, like I was asking about the weather. She blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then she gave me that slow, measured smile, the one she used on board members and nervous interns. At the hotel. The team booked me a suite after the gala. It was late. You left without saying anything, remember? I do remember, I said. And you weren't at the hotel. She froze for half a second, the kind of pause only noticeable if you're looking for it. I was, excuse me? I know about the other email. The bookings. The transfers. Him. Them. All of it. She didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Instead, she laughed. Not hysterical. Not nervous. It was soft. Controlled. Almost disappointed. Oh, she said. So it's finally your turn to pretend you matter. I've never felt something go still inside me like that. Not break, just stop. Like a gear that had been spinning too long and suddenly realized the machine was pointless. You think you know everything now? She continued, stepping into the kitchen like we were discussing renovations. You think you can piece together some scraps of information and suddenly I'm the villain? Please, this world eats men like you alive. She sat across from me, crossed her legs, picked up a pear from the fruit bowl and bit into it like we were at brunch. Let me guess. You're going to leave? Make some dramatic exit? Call your lawyer? Be my guest. You won't win. Not because I'll ruin you, but because you were never in the game to begin with. I said nothing. I just stared at her, memorizing the way she looked in that moment. Triumphant, cruel, unbothered. She had no idea I'd already started something. I'd already copied the files. already spoken to someone I trusted, already made moves, because I wasn't broken, and I wasn't leaving, not until everything she built came crashing down. The next morning wasn't quiet. It was surgical. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam any doors. I left her in the kitchen with her fruit and her smugness and drove to a building I hadn't been inside for years. A small office on the east side, not flashy, not listed anywhere. My old friend Derek ran it. He used to be a private investigator before he learned that secrets were more valuable than justice. I didn't need a divorce lawyer. I needed someone who could dig, someone who didn't ask why. He looked at me once, saw the shift in my face, and nodded without a word. By noon, Derek had already found things I didn't think possible. The congressman wasn't her only benefactor. There was a CEO from a pharmaceutical company. She met him at a wellness conference in Miami. A retired tech investor, twice her age. She called him a mentor. And worst of all, a city judge. A man we once had over for dinner. Derek pulled out photos. Conversations recorded through hotel Bluetooth. She wasn't just having affairs. She was networking through them. Whispering names, suggesting connections, exchanging access. Every relationship was a transaction dressed up in intimacy. She hadn't just lied. She'd built an entire empire on deception and manipulation. But the real twist came when Derek traced a few wire transfers back to an LLC. Not hers. Not any of the men's. My name. My information. My signature. Except I never signed anything. She was laundering favors through me, and she knew I wouldn't find out, because I never looked. I spent the next days putting the puzzle together. I didn't go home. I didn't even text her. She didn't text me either. That told me everything I needed to know. She was sure I'd gone quiet. She thought I'd broken down somewhere, drowning in self-pity, nursing the wound. She had no idea I was building something. The plan was simple. Let her think she won. Let her throw her next party. I knew she would. She always threw one when she smelled blood in the water. She'd invite the congressman, the CEO, maybe even the judge. They'd smile, shake hands, congratulate each other on another successful illusion. And I'd be there, but not to drink champagne. I'd be the one lighting the match. The night of the event, I walked in through the front like I owned the place. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Just raised an eyebrow, walked toward me with that familiar arrogance. "Wow," she said. "I didn't think you had the spine to show your face here." I smiled. "I came to see the guests." "Still playing detective? That's cute." She turned and floated back into her circle of power, back into their little coven of collusion. But I didn't follow her. I found Derek waiting by the back entrance. He handed me the last piece of what I needed. A flash drive. 3 hours of footage. Conversations. Documents. Dates. A roadmap of rot. We split up. 10 minutes later, the projector that was supposed to show her charity montage flickered to black, and then lit up with names, numbers, audio. The room froze. People turned. And for the first time since I'd met her, she looked small. She didn't understand it at first. Not completely. The silence ate her faster than the footage did. She looked at me across the room, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She reached for her phone. Gone. No signal. The place was a dead zone. Derek made sure of that. Then came the murmurs, the footsteps, the backs turning. She tried to speak, tried to explain. She even tried to laugh. No one laughed with her. The congressman left first. The CEO followed. The judge stayed longest, watching her with a look I couldn't decipher. Betrayal? Rage? Fear? Maybe all three. Then he left too. She was alone in the room. For the first time in her perfectly choreographed life. I walked past her on my way out. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. She reached for my arm. "Please," she whispered. And I leaned in, calm, close. "I warned you once." You laughed. I walked out, leaving her in the wreckage of her ambition. But that wasn't the end. It was only part of what I planned. The fallout came fast, but not all at once. That's the thing about carefully curated chaos. It doesn't explode. It unravels. One thread at a time. I didn't need to lift a finger. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Emails leaked. Screenshots circulated. Private messages turned public. Her name hit the headlines in whispers at first, then in all caps. She tried to regain control. I watched from a distance as she activated every weapon in her arsenal: charm, denial, threats. She gave an interview, said it was all a smear campaign orchestrated by a bitter ex. She even smiled during it, the same smile she used to wear when she told me she loved me. I almost laughed. But the men she counted on were already scrambling. Not for her, for themselves. The congressman made a statement within days. Cold, detached. He regretted any professional association and had no knowledge of the allegations prior to the event in question. He threw her to the wolves and called it diplomacy. The CEO? He vanished, ghosted the press, liquidated a few assets, fired half his PR team. I heard he booked a one-way to Monaco. The judge was under internal investigation by the end of the week. She called me once. It was 2:47 a.m. I watched the screen light up with her name, and for a moment, I considered answering. Not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted to hear how far she'd fall. Instead, I let it ring. Then I blocked her number. But I wasn't done yet, because while she was busy drowning in the public mess, I went deeper. I had Derek pull financial records, internal correspondences, a trail of favors she owed and ones she cashed. There were deals she made in my name, contracts she signed as if we were still a team. Some were harmless, others weren't. One of them involved a development permit pushed through under my old company's address. The signature matched mine, forged, obviously. The man who processed it? Her new advisor. A slick-talking consultant with too much teeth and not enough ethics. His name hadn't shown up before, but now it was everywhere. So I paid him a visit. Not to threaten, to negotiate. He didn't know who I was when I first walked into his office. That changed when I dropped the file on his desk. His posture stiffened. He tried to play dumb. I gave him one choice. Cooperate or I take it all public. He folded faster than I expected. Told me everything. How she lured him into it. How she promised him a percentage of future projects. How she used my name because you never noticed anything anyway. That line stuck with me. Like a parasite. She didn't just cheat. She erased me. Used me like a ladder and thought I'd never climb out from underneath. But I wasn't here for justice. I was building something of my own. And she'd already handed me the blueprints. By the end of the month, I'd bought out 3 of the 5 shell companies she thought she still controlled. Quietly, legally, strategically. I left one untouched. The one that looked the cleanest on paper but held the dirtiest connections. That one was my last move. My checkmate. I didn't want her arrested. I wanted her isolated. I wanted every door that once opened at her touch to slam shut in her face. And slowly, one by one, they did. But then came the letter. Unmarked envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo of her. Taken recently. Grainy. From a distance. And a message on the back. She's not the only one who owes. The game had shifted. Again, I kept the photo in my drawer for 3 days before I told Derek about it. He looked at it once, flipped it over, then held it up to the light like he expected it to bleed answers. Didn't you think it's her trying to rattle you? He asked. No, I said. If it was her, it'd come with perfume and a lie. That message, she's not the only one who owes, wasn't her voice. She never said, oh. She said, deserve. Big difference. No, this was someone else. Someone who'd been part of her hidden empire. Someone who lost something when her world collapsed. And now they were crawling out of the rubble, looking for debt. I had a name in mind. One I hadn't touched yet. One I had hoped to avoid. Clive Madden. He was the money behind one of her earlier ventures. A silent partner on paper, but anyone who paid attention knew he was more like a collector. He didn't invest unless he had leverage. I remember him from a dinner 3 years ago. He had a way of making compliments sound like threats. Madison, though she never used that name with him, used to call him our guardian angel when she was drunk. But I remember the way she looked at him sober, like he held something over her. Derek did some digging. Clive had vanished from the scene not long after her first scandal broke. His real estate licenses were quietly revoked. His social accounts scrubbed. But money like his doesn't vanish. It hides, and it leaves traces. We found a property under an alias. A penthouse suite uptown, leased to a shell company Derek traced back to a former law firm Clive once burned to the ground in court. That was enough. I went up there the next day. No disguise. No lies. He answered the door in a robe, glass of scotch in hand, as if he'd been expecting me for months. He didn't invite me in, just looked me up and down, amused. "I heard you turned demolitionist," he said, smirking. "Must feel good, taking her down. Problem is, when you pull down one roof, you never know what else it was holding up." I handed him the photo. He didn't react, just studied it. Then he laughed, short and cruel. "You think I sent this? Did you?" He took a sip of his drink. "If I wanted to threaten you, you'd be in the trunk of a car, not standing on my welcome mat." "Then who?" I asked. He walked past me, left the door open. I followed. The place was immaculate, almost sterile. Everything beige and glass. The kind of wealth that doesn't need to show off because it knows it can destroy you from a distance. "She had debts," Clive said, settling into a chair. "Not just financial. Favors. Promises. Things she never intended to pay. When her curtain dropped, a lot of people were left exposed. You made it personal. That was your mistake. I wasn't the one who started this. You were the one who lit it on fire." He handed me back the photo. "I didn't send it, but I know who did." "Who?" He smiled. "Let's just say someone she burned long before you ever knew there was fire." He didn't give me a name. He gave me a location. A storage unit in the industrial district. Unit 47. No code. No lock. I didn't ask questions. I drove straight there. It was nearly midnight by the time I reached it. The place was quiet, humming with the low buzz of streetlights and the occasional train in the distance. The unit door opened with a creak that made my skin crawl. Inside, boxes. Dozens of them. Labeled. Dated. Organized. Not mine. Hers. Old records. Flash drives. Letters. A decade of secrets wrapped in dust and darkness. Someone had kept them. Protected them. Maybe even used them. And someone was waiting for me to find them. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was a map. A map leading deeper into the war she started. And I wasn't walking. I was running straight into it. The boxes weren't thrown together. They were curated, methodical, almost obsessive. Each one was labeled with a year, and inside each were files marked with men's names, business proposals, meeting transcripts, burner phone logs, receipts from restaurants I'd never been invited to. These weren't keepsakes. They were leverage, insurance, weapons. And in the far back, beneath a taped-up shoebox labeled 2007, I found something that didn't belong. A thumb drive unmarked, taped to the bottom. I didn't plug it in right away. My gut told me whatever was on that drive wasn't meant for me. It was meant for whoever came looking. And now I'd walked into someone else's trap. I called Derek from the car. "Scan this thing before I even think about opening it." He didn't ask questions. He knew better. While I waited, I drove. Not home. Not to a hotel. Just nowhere. The roads felt like they were folding in on themselves. For the first time since this started, I couldn't tell if I was still hunting her legacy or if I'd just been pulled into it. Derek called an hour later. "It's clean, but you'll want to see this in person." His voice was off. No sarcasm. No wit. Just flat. I turned the car around and drove straight to his office. He didn't say anything when I came in. Just played the footage. It was surveillance. Grainy, low-angle, time-stamped. Her. Sitting across from someone I didn't recognize. Early 30s. Worn suit. Nervous energy. They were in a bar, not a classy one. Cheap lighting, dirty walls. She was dressed too nicely for the place, which meant it was intentional. She came to him. There was no audio, just occasional subtitles from auto-transcription. "Man, are you sure this will work?" Her. "If you do exactly what I say." Man. "And what about your husband?" Her. Smiles. "He doesn't matter. He never has." That part didn't hurt. It boiled. Because this wasn't recent. The timestamp read May 14th, 2018. Back when we were still real. Or I thought we were. But the real shock wasn't her betrayal. It was the man. Derek froze the frame. "You recognize him now?" I nodded slowly. He was an intern. At my company. For one summer. He'd been quiet, smart, forgettable. I didn't even remember firing him. He just vanished. I never knew she met with him, but she did. And the next video showed exactly why. He'd been part of a whistleblower case. Buried, then resolved under confidential settlement. I was told at the time it was a misunderstanding. Some data misfiled. Nothing major. But now, with the files from the storage unit and this footage, it painted a different story. She used him to leak information from my company, then sold that leak to competitors, and orchestrated a settlement behind my back, all while sleeping beside me like nothing had happened. This wasn't an affair. This was treason. And suddenly, the photo in the envelope made sense. It wasn't a threat. It was a message. She'd betrayed more than hearts. She'd betrayed money, power, people who don't forget. And whoever sent that photo, they didn't want her exposed. They wanted her found. But they couldn't do it themselves, not without burning their own hands. They needed someone outside the game, someone who'd already lost everything. Me. So now I was no longer the man who was wronged. I was the one holding the leash. And somewhere out there she was running. Because she finally understood. This time I wasn't coming to take her down. I was coming to collect. She disappeared before I could even feel the satisfaction of knowing everything. No more social media. Her apartment stripped down to drywall and silence. Her car, leased under one of the shell companies, abandoned in a parking garage downtown, keys still inside. Clean, not rushed. She left like someone who had done it before. And that's what rattled me most. She had done this before. I spent 3 days chasing traces. Every trail I followed led to another name, another address, another dead end. Her calls had stopped. Not just to me, but to everyone. Even Derek's contacts, who prided themselves on finding people who didn't want to be found, came up short. But I wasn't interested in where she was hiding. I wanted to know why she was running now. Because she wasn't afraid of me. Not really. She'd stood in front of me at her own downfall and laughed like a woman who believed she couldn't be touched. No, someone else was after her. And that someone was cleaning house. It started with small headlines. A real estate tycoon, one of her earlier investors, found dead. Suicide, they said. But the timing was too sharp, too clean. A banker connected to a fake grant scheme vanished the same week. No body, just an empty apartment and a voicemail full of unfinished apologies. Derek said nothing, but I saw the concern in his eyes grow. "You sure you want to keep pulling this thread?" he asked me one night. I didn't answer. Instead, I went back to the storage unit. I needed to look again. I hadn't touched the final box yet. It had no label, no year, just a red string tied around it, like it had been sealed with intent. Inside were photos, not of her, of me, some old from when we first met, some recent, a shot of me leaving Derek's office, one outside my apartment, one from inside a cafe I didn't even know had cameras. I flipped through them in silence. At the bottom, a letter, handwritten, in her sharp, precise cursive. "You were never supposed to get this far. If you're reading this, it means I underestimated you. Again. So I'll tell you something I've never told anyone. I wasn't working with them. I was surviving them. You were never my target. But you were the only thing I ever regretted using. And that's why I need you to stop. Because the next time you follow the trail, it won't lead to me. It'll lead to something worse. No signature. No address. Just a smear of what I hoped was wine." I showed the letter to Derek. He read it twice, then looked at me and said, "She's trying to end it on her terms. Even now. But that's the thing about predators who become prey. They forget that hunted men become hunters when they lose everything. And I had lost everything, except purpose. And then came the final turn. I got a message. Not from her. From the man in the first surveillance video, the one she met in the bar back in 2018. He was still alive. And he wanted to talk. No phones. No emails. In person only. He picked the location. A church basement. Empty. Cold. Flickering fluorescent lights. When I walked in, he was already there. Paler than I remembered. Thinner. But his eyes were the same. Afraid. "You have no idea what she got mixed into," he said. "I tried to warn her. She said she had a way out. She always does." He shook his head. "No, this was different. She had something they want buried. That's why they're cleaning up. That's why she's next." I leaned forward. What did she take? He hesitated, then handed me a USB drive. She didn't just steal data. She recorded meetings. Meetings that were never supposed to happen. Deals that weren't legal in any country. Offshore accounts tied to real people. Real deaths. And you kept a copy? She made me. That was when I understood. This wasn't revenge. This was inheritance. She wasn't just running. She was passing the torch. And she'd chosen me to hold it. I didn't sleep after that meeting. Not out of fear. Out of calculation. The drive he gave me wasn't encrypted. She wanted me to see it. And once I did, I knew why she ran. Video files. Dozens. Some taken in hotel suites, others in private jets, some in government buildings that didn't officially exist. She'd hidden recording devices in watches, pens, even a pair of earrings I'd given her on our second anniversary. How poetic. The people caught on tape weren't just the usual suspects. These were men with influence so thick it moved markets, bought silence, and erased lives with a single phone call. The conversations? Not negotiations. Not deals. Confessions. Crimes spoken in casual tones, like ordering drinks. A politician laughing about a land grab in a third-world country. A defense contractor explaining how to inflate numbers to trigger conflict. A media executive coaching a senator's aide on how to spin a death into a campaign platform. And in the background of every recording, her voice. Measured. Curious. Perfectly placed questions. She was playing them all. Not for blackmail. For protection. She had built a vault of leverage. A nuclear option. But she didn't keep it. She gave it to me. Now I was the one holding the detonator. And they knew it. The second I opened the files, my digital footprint flared up. Derek called that morning in a panic. 2 of his dummy servers were hit by a brute force attack within minutes of my access. Someone was watching the cloud. And someone knew that their sins were no longer just whispered in closed rooms. They were in my hands. I moved again. Burned the old phone. Shut down accounts. I didn't even tell Derek where I was going. But that wasn't enough. I needed to draw her out. I needed to force her hand. So I made a choice. I uploaded a single clip, 37 seconds long, to a dark web board known for leaking government files. I didn't tag it. Didn't label names. Just uploaded it with one caption. Time's up. It didn't take long. Within 12 hours, I received a message on a private network that hadn't been touched in 5 years. Not since I was still running my company. Not since she had access to it. The message was one line. You stupid, brave idiot. Meet me where it started. Could have meant anywhere. A bar. A hotel. Our old loft. But I knew. There was only one place it started, where we both stopped pretending we were anything close to real. Claiborne's estate. The gala. The place where I first saw her touch another man like I didn't exist. That's where she wanted to meet. I didn't hesitate. I broke into the property 2 hours past midnight, through the rear gardens, past the place where she once lied about a lipstick stain. The estate had long since closed for renovation, rumors of financial collapse, or maybe just a strategic retreat. I moved through shadow and silence until I reached the ballroom. She was already there, standing by the shattered glass of the main window, backlit by the moon, holding a gun, not pointed at me, resting at her side like a reminder that trust was a dead language. I didn't think you'd actually come, she said. You asked me to. Not the same thing. I stepped forward. You're being hunted. She gave a tired smile. Aren't we all? I have the files. I know. You gave them to me. She nodded slowly. You were the only one who wouldn't sell them. Or me. A pause. Then, I'm sorry. The words fell like dead leaves. Too late. Too soft. I stared at her for what felt like an hour. You lied. You used me. I protected you. That's not the same thing. No, she said. But it's all I could do. Back then. Another pause. Then she looked up at me, eyes sharper now. They won't stop. They won't care who you are. Once they figure out you're the new lockbox, they'll come. And they'll come fast. I know. You should destroy the drive. I won't. She smiled. Almost proud. And then, from outside, a sound. Movement. She turned toward the noise. They're here. I looked at her. So what now? She didn't answer. She just looked at the door. Then at me. And whispered. Run. I didn't run. Not at first. She bolted through the side door like a ghost wearing her old life's skin. I stood in the center of the ballroom, every part of me screaming to chase her, but something held me there. Instinct or stubbornness, I don't know. Maybe I wanted to see who was coming. Maybe I wanted them to see me, too. The footsteps echoed first. Heavy. Organized. Not the erratic shuffling of someone desperate. These were men trained to move like shadows. 3 of them, maybe 4, judging by the rhythm. Then came the low hiss of a voice. Radioed. Sharp. Clipped. He's inside. Confirmed. Whoever he was, it was me. I slipped out the rear, through the kitchen hallway, heart steady but cold. I'd mapped this place in my mind since the first time I stepped into it years ago, watching her float through conversations like nothing could touch her. I knew the exits, the dead zones in the security system, the way the hedges curved around the west wing like arms waiting to hide someone. I dove into those hedges just as a flashlight beam swept over the lawn. They were fast. They weren't here to ask questions. They weren't even looking for her. They were looking for what I carried. That's when I knew this had gone beyond her. Beyond us. This was about the information. The recordings. The proof. I texted Derek from a burner. Contingency plan active. Launch Protocol 3. 2 words I'd hoped I'd never use. Protocol 3 was simple. Release everything if I went silent for 48 hours. No editing. No context. No mercy. Burn them all. If they were going to take me out, I'd go out as a flood, not a whisper. I stayed low until the property emptied again. They moved like a sweep, no rush, no shouting. Professionals. Which meant only one thing. This wasn't freelance. This was sanctioned. Maybe not legally, but by someone with reach. Political or corporate, I couldn't yet tell. But their precision told me they'd done this before. And then another message. Not from her. From a scrambled number routed through Eastern Europe. You're holding a very dangerous truth. We want the woman, not the files. Give her to us. Walk away clean. That's when I realized. She wasn't just a liability. She was a target. And they believed I still knew where she was. But I didn't. She ran. She left me with a bag of fire and a blood trail I never signed up for. So I played the only card I had left. I baited the hook. I went online. Secure forums. A digital whisper campaign. Posted under an old pseudonym of hers, one only she and I knew. I dropped pieces of her scent into the water. Hotel check-ins, false sightings, credit card flares. Enough to make her think I was broadcasting her location. Within hours, I got a bite. Stop. Now. Meet me. No signature. But I knew her tone. She hadn't disappeared. She was watching me. I sent coordinates. A small lake house 3 hours out of the city. A place we visited once, back when things still had color. Back when her lies hadn't yet unraveled the bones of my life. I arrived before sunrise. Waited. She showed up just after 6 a.m. Wearing a hoodie, eyes shadowed, but jaw set like stone. You're going to get me killed, she said before I even opened the door. You already lit the fuse. I gave you the drive because I thought you could survive it. You weren't supposed to use it. That's what you never understood. I said. I don't survive anymore. I fight. She laughed once, not mockingly. Sadly. You really want to go to war with them? I already did. I'm not who you think I am, she said, stepping inside. No, I said, closing the door behind her. You're worse. And you're the only one I trust to help me burn it all down. She looked at me, long, measured, and finally, something cracked in her armor. Then we don't have time. What do you mean? They're not after me anymore. Not just me. She opened her bag and threw something on the table. A second drive. Different from mine. Encrypted. What's on that? She didn't blink. Insurance. And for the first time since this began, I saw it. Not fear. Resignation. She had known this ending would come. She just didn't expect me to be the one standing in the middle of it. I stared at the second drive. Its cold, metallic shape catching the first light seeping through the lake house window. It looked innocuous, like a paperweight or a keychain trinket, but I could feel the weight of it. The pressure in the room changed the moment she dropped it on the table. Whatever was on it wasn't insurance. It was detonation. What's the password? I asked. She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, She walked to the window, pulled the curtain back, scanned the woods. They already know we're here, she said softly. Then why the show? Because this is the last place they'd expect me to go. I've spent years running forward. You're the only person I ever circled back to. I ignored the sting behind that. There wasn't time to feel sentimental. She turned to face me again. You think what you have is dangerous, the tapes, the files, the names. It's not enough. What's on that drive? It doesn't prove corruption. Proves control. Explain. There's a list, she said. It's called the Stillwater Ledger. Blackmail material on powerful people, not just to keep them quiet, but to make them move. To vote. To buy. To bury. Everyone thought the ledger was just a myth. A conspiracy to explain how impossible deals get done. But it's real. And it's on that drive. And you have it. Why? She looked tired. Older suddenly. Because I made myself useful. And because the man who kept it trusted me just enough to let me hold a copy. Before he died. What happened to him? She didn't blink. You ever hear of a man drowning in 3 inches of water in his own bathtub? Neither had I. Until they called it natural causes. So that was it. The ledger wasn't leverage. It was a hit list. People on it were controlled. People who saw it died. And now that information sat between us like a live grenade with a pulled pin. We release this, I said. And the world doesn't just watch. It ignites. Which is why I never did, she said. And why I gave you everything else first. I had to see what you'd do with power before I handed you the apocalypse. She moved closer. You still want revenge? She asked. Or do you want something bigger? I want them to choke on everything they thought they buried. Then listen carefully, she said, lowering her voice. There's a location embedded in the ledger's metadata. A vault. Physical. Hard copy evidence. Bank records, contracts, even personal recordings. I haven't been there. I don't have access. But you might. Why me? Because they think you're nothing. You're still off the radar. Your name doesn't raise alarms like mine does. You can walk where I can't. And what about you? She smiled hollow, resigned. I'm the decoy now. The one they'll follow. No. We do this together. You want to die for me? After all this? No, I said. I want to win. She hesitated. Then slid the drive toward me. Password scrawled on a torn receipt. Belhist_013. The night it all started. I copied the contents. Then encrypted them again. 3 separate drives. 3 hiding spots. Derek got one. The second went inside a safety deposit box under a name that didn't exist yet. The third stayed with me. We left the lake house at dawn. Split cars. Burners in hand. No contact unless it was life or death. She turned to me before we parted. If I die before we finish this, she said, don't make a martyr out of me. Just finish the job. You're not dying, I said, and for once, just once, I saw her believe it. I drove 8 hours to the coordinates embedded in the ledger's code, through ghost towns and storm-lashed highways, to an old, decommissioned government archive buried in the hills of North Carolina. The building looked dead, but the generator kicked on when I approached. Motion sensors still worked. Someone had kept this place breathing. I stepped inside, and the lights came on. Someone was already waiting. The man standing inside the archive was dressed like he belonged to no time at all. Pressed slacks, no tie, silver hair combed back like he'd never sweated in his life. He didn't move when I entered. Didn't flinch. Just regarded me with the slow, assessing calm of someone who didn't need weapons to be dangerous. You took your time, he said. I wasn't invited. You were chosen. There's a difference. I stepped closer. Every nerve in my body braced for betrayal. You know what I'm here for. He nodded. I do. And you already have it. Then why are you here? To watch the end. He gestured toward the far wall. A heavy vault door waited there, half hidden behind filing cabinets and dust-slick monitors. He held out a keycard, the kind you only see in movies about facilities no one admits exist. I'm not going to stop you, he said. It's too late for that. But understand something, once you open that door, nothing goes back in the box. Not you. Not her. Not them. The world, you know? It ends right there. I took the card. He turned away, walked past me, and disappeared into the dark without another word. I stared at the vault for what felt like hours. Then I unlocked it. The door swung open with a groan that felt biblical. Inside were shelves, labeled binders, old surveillance reels, photographs, contracts, more hard drives than I could count, names that hadn't come up yet, people even she hadn't uncovered, presidents, prime ministers, families with legacies centuries deep, all tangled in a currency of control that made blood look like pocket change. This wasn't about her anymore. This wasn't even about revenge. This was the source. I set up the camera Derek gave me. Live stream, triggered by movement, set to bounce through servers across 5 continents. I gave myself 1 minute to leave the building before it started broadcasting. And then I made the call. She answered after 1 ring. "You found it?" she asked, voice quiet. "I did." Pause. "And what are you going to do?" "I'm going to give them what they deserve. Then I'll be gone by the time you're done." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere without power." I wanted to say something else. Anything else. But she hung up. She always got the last word. I walked out into the sunrise. The building behind me glowing gold as if the truth itself was on fire inside it. And then the broadcast began. Emails, recordings, deals, kill orders, election meddling, foreign bribes, political rigging so delicate and long-running it made history look staged. The world cracked. By nightfall, the networks were melting. Some called it fake. Others demanded blood. Countries closed borders. Billionaires vanished. Resignations poured like rain. Riots. Celebrations. Truth worshipped and cursed all at once. And me? I didn't say a word. I disappeared. Let them chase ghosts. Let them wonder if she lived. If I lived. If the ones behind it all ever truly fell. The truth was out. That was enough. But sometimes, I still watch. Late at night, from places they never think to look. And once, only once, I saw her. In a market, across an ocean, wearing a coat I once bought her for a winter that never came. She looked at me, didn't smile, didn't wave. Just nodded. Because we both knew. We didn't win. We didn't lose. We ended something. And left the pieces for the world to figure out.